Hello and welcome to Fintech Insider Insights Live. I'm Simon Taylor, and earlier this summer, we gathered a few people together from companies that were directly affected by the Wirecard fallout to hear what the experience was like for them. Today, we wanted to follow up with the saga as Railsbank have recently announced their acquisition of Wirecard's UK arm, Wirecard Solutions, and well, we have some great guests to get through all of this sort of fallout and what happened next and really unpick it all. But before we get to that, I'm actually going to give just a little bit of background for those of you that may have slept since or forgotten what actually happened. So there was a German fintech, notably called Wirecard, that collapsed into insolvency in June of this year after facing a huge accounting scandal and subsequently failing to make payments of nearly 1.5 billion US dollars that were due. There were two key persons in the story. One was Markus Braun, who is the former Wirecard CEO, and Jan Marsalek, who was appointed COO in 2010. When the collapse happened, Marsalek was fired, and later on he disappeared and made it onto Interpol's most wanted list. The notice was issued by Munich prosecutors and the feds, and it says Mr. Marsalek was strongly suspected of having committed billions in commercial gang fraud, the particular serious case of embezzlement and other property and economic offences. You could not make a movie about this stuff. It's crazy. The former CEO, Markus Braun, was then arrested on suspicion of fraud just after the collapse in June. And since the collapse, there have been rumors circling around as to what actually happened and which parts of the industry were affected. And of course, as we know, Wirecard AG was the German parent company of Wirecard Solutions UK. Wirecard Solutions UK had, of course, a number of UK fintechs as its customers. And on our previous video, we spoke to a number of folks, including Anna Money and Equals and Soldo, who were at the time customers of Wirecard, and they were impacted. Now, those UK fintechs that were impacted during that have since migrated to other issuers through the help of players such as Global Processing Services, and of course the good work of those organizations themselves, the schemes, Visa and MasterCard, and many, many others. But rather than just talk through facts, we thought it'd be good to have a couple of guests who know a little bit about payments processing, know a little bit about what's happened close to the ground. So we wanted to speak to Nigel Verdon, who's CEO of Railsbank, and Joanne Dewar, who is the CEO of GPS, to get a fuller understanding of what actually happened. But equally as important, what did not happen? Nigel, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Good, thanks. And thanks for the invitation to join the show again.
Oh, you're welcome, Nigel. Can you just remind everybody what Railsbank is?
So Railsbank, we are a platform that enables anybody to be a fintech by embedding financial services in your customer journeys. So whether you're a fintech starting up and you've got a customer journey needs to build a fintech business, or an existing brand like a supermarket, like an airport, like a utility company who wants to embed financial services in your existing journeys, with a platform that enables you to do that.
Thank you, Nigel. And also, of course, joining us is Joanne. How are you doing today, Jo?
Very good. Thanks for allowing me to join you to this.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. And remind everybody what GPS does.
So Global Processing Services, otherwise known as GPS, is an issuer processor. So we are the tech behind the tech, providing a platform that connects fintechs, e-wallet providers, and digital banks to the scheme rails, integrating with issuing banks, car manufacturers, and making the whole ecosystem work behind the scenes.
So, Jo, maybe I'll start with you. What brings you here today? Why is it that you think the Wirecard story is kind of in need of kind of pulling through and the Fintech Insider Insights treatment?
Well, I very much welcome the opportunity to be able to share some things about Wirecard. And I think that the first key thing is that Wirecard Card Solutions itself, whilst it is a fully owned subsidiary of Wirecard AG, Wirecard Card Solutions has never done anything wrong. And not only has it never done anything wrong, actually for many, many years, it has led the way in the fintech ecosystem, creating very many award-winning propositions across Europe. It's not just the UK, and working, primarily together with ourselves. And at the time it was really just MasterCard in the fintech space. We created this whole fintech revolution that the world's been watching on and learning from. And that's evident through the very many awards that have been won over the years. So I think that's the very first thing to say, that whilst the Wirecard brand has obviously been very much damaged by what's happened by the parent company, quite rightly, actually Wirecard Card Solutions is and has been a good company, and there has never been any wrongdoing by that organization.
It's entirely possible that the parent can be guilty of a crime and the child is entirely innocent. And that seems to be very much the case. And of course, people forget that Wirecard Solutions, the UK company, was in fact an acquisition. It existed long before Wirecard AG bought it. It has heritage and it's been fairly well known for sort of quite some time. Nigel, what brings you here today as well? Obviously, that's now a business that's near and dear to your heart.
We just recently acquired the assets of Wirecard UK because, again, as Joe quite rightly says, it was a good business, and it's quite separate from majority of Wirecard's business, because 95% of the business really is on the card acquiring side, so taking payments in terminals and e-commerce payments. So and it had history here in the UK, a long history at Newcastle Building Society. And was very self-contained. There was some corporate services provided by, and some loan guarantees, etc., paid by Wirecard AG. But it's
just some small sound problems. I'm sure Nigel will be right back.
With her and her team as well, because the process is sitting there in the background as the sort of as the technology and the glue that's making this happen, working on migrating everything over. And I think one of the things that hasn't been apparent is the amount of the various parties in the supply chain and the operational chain to get cards being issued out to consumers. And the thankless task of being what can be considered sort of like the back office or the middleware where GPS sits is they're also critical to migrating these across, because their technology does the transaction processing for the cards every day between Visa and MasterCard and the customer.
And I think that's an important point, Nigel, isn't it? That people don't realize when they take their card, whatever color it may be, and sort of use it in a store, the brand on the front of it isn't doing everything. They're doing a lot of work, but actually that brand may be working with somebody like Railsbank, but Railsbank may be working with somebody like GPS, who then work with Visa and MasterCard that then connect you into the rest of the banking network. And those hops aren't clearly understood. And sometimes people get confused about the different roles between them and that can lead to a lot of misunderstanding, I think, especially when things go wrong.
Sure. I think one of the key things, it can be owning it end to end, or there can be multiple parties. It depends how things are set up. And I think that if you look at a functional basis, you've got somebody called a card issuer, and they hold the license from Visa or MasterCard.
Can you give me an example of who a card issuer might be?
Wirecard.
Brands people will have heard of.
Wirecard is one. Barclays is another. Railsbank, we are principal issuer as well. Mm-hmm. So you are authorized.
I can step in to explain that a bit more if we lose Nigel.
Well.
But
Nigel, continue. We just lost you for a second.
So there's a card issuer who's licensed by Visa or MasterCard or Amex to issue a piece of plastic or card credentials. You then got the next piece, which is the processing, which means there's a single endpoint at Visa or MasterCard, which is the connection to their network. And that connection to the network is where you get the message from a merchant or a shop, your corner shop, saying, can I spend this money on this card? It comes to the endpoint, then goes through the piece which GPS is, which is the processor. And the processor then passes the message to whoever's holding the store of value or the system of record, as in who's got the money, to answer yes or no that this card payment is authorized. Then it goes back to the processor and to the Visa network and all the way to the terminal you might have in the corner shop. So there's a lot of people in that chain, including Visa, MasterCard, their network. At the other end, you've got what's called an acquirer, and then you've got the terminal and stuff. So it's a whole value chain of which there's a lot of people. Fundamentally, on the issuing side is the issuer, the processor, and then the printer is the next person. So when you actually issue a card, you've got to go to Joe or send a message to Joe's business, and they then forward that message securely and with all the credentials that are needed on the card to the printer, who then prints a bit of plastic, shoves it in the post, and gets it to the consumer or SME whose card that is.
And people just don't think about all of this magic that goes on behind the curtain. And then when something goes wrong, suddenly people want answers about what's going on behind the curtain. And it can be quite easy to go, oh, well, Wirecard AG, the German business was bad. Therefore, surely the UK business was bad and the whole thing's rotten all the way down. But Joe, I guess that's kind of a bit more complicated than that, isn't it? That the reality is that there are other people involved, and that the UK fintech industry has done reasonably well here. So as we move sort of through this, what do you think the key misunderstandings have been that you've sort of seen and heard in the last sort of 2 or 3 months?
Well, I think one of the key concerns was the point at which the FCA suspended the license for Wirecard Card Solutions over the 4-day period, because at that point there was a question mark raised as to whether the safeguarded funds were in fact safeguarded, and they absolutely were. And Wirecard Card Solutions' team were, in very short order, were able to demonstrate to the FCA exactly what was where. It was all in order, and then work with the FCA to actually sort of just repatriate, to bring those funds back under banks that were regulated by the UK regulator. But what happened, during that period was, just through the lack of being able to communicate, there was a lot of sort of doubts and rumours created in the market as to the security of those funds.
And I think that's an important point. I mean, the metaphor I like to use for this, Joan, it's probably imperfect, is that the money was still, like, I think about if the card rail is like a railway line and the store of value is a train station, the people were still in the station. The money was still in the account. It was still there. It was just the trains couldn't run along the track for the period of time, but the money was still good for it. And I think the issue of, are they still good for it? Are they still solvent? Is different to, are payments going through and is money moving right now? Those are two sort of separate issues.
Yeah, and to take that analogy just a step further, it was as if the FCA sort of held somebody back because they would have otherwise been had the potential of being run over by a fast-moving train. So yes, they acted absolutely in the best interests of the cardholders, which is what they aim to do. And I think nevertheless there's a lot of lessons learnt, and we wouldn't want to have to go through that experience as an industry again. And what happened in the aftermath is certainly I was involved supporting the EPA, the Emerging Payments Association, organised with a whole pile of industry experts to actually put together a paper to provide further insight and recommendation to the FCA and to HM Treasury as to how we can learn lessons and sort of avoid that kind of lockdown situation again going forwards.
So adding a little bit more colour to that, I think the key issues there, because we're regulated ourselves with the money license, and we're in direct dialogue every day pretty much with the FCA. Was just a bit of colour on there was some funds held in accounts in banks that were creditors to Wirecard AG, and so would have a claim on those monies because they're outside of the UK, and the FCA had no jurisdiction on them. So I think the FCA had to do the right thing to be able to repatriate the funds, so they're in control of where those funds are. The other side is, yes, the money is always held in segregated accounts. There is a slight issue, which is there is a UK Companies Act is out of whack with the payment service regs that says if 1 cent of non-customer money is in the customer money, isn't there, the creditors have access to all of the client money. And this is something the FCA, and we've pushed majorly, has to address with the regulation, and Parliament has to address, because it's a combination of insolvency law and the payment services regs. And so that's why the FCA really had to step in, was to understand, is there anything, if this company goes insolvent, that can trigger this quirk of law that will say that the creditors have access to these funds. And that was one of the main danger. Number 2 was repatriating, so they've got it into their own legislative cover and legal cover, because you're in the UK. And it takes they did a lot of work reconciling and making sure they could answer the question. These are 100% client funds without any pollution of non-customer money in there, and therefore the card holder is safe and the money's there. Because you're quite right, there's a separation between solvency when a company goes out of business and the customer monies. The third part you need to be totally clear on is, if your books and records are not correct, or your books and records are difficult to interpret, the creditor, the insolvency, the liquidator can charge money to the customer money account for allocating and finding whose money that actually is. And so they, as you know, liquidators charge a ton of money for on the hourly rates. And so the key thing, the third thing the FCA would really want in that situation is understanding, are the books and records totally clear on whose client money this is? And I think that's where it took a little time over the weekend. And it's in reflection because they're also looking at the liquidity situation of the company. Last year. So I think I just cut out there. I was just saying the other situation was Ipagoo went bust last year because the regulated entity looked liquid. When they looked through Ipagoo to the holding company, the holding company had a liquidity issue, went bust. They had things like sports cars and artworks on the balance sheet and things. And because the FCA hadn't looked through, it didn't see the situation that made Ipagoo go bust. And Ipagoo is, like ourselves, a direct clearer of sterling as members of UK Faster Payments. So that's another thing that they're looking through is, do Wirecard UK, when looked through, have a liquidity issue with the parent? And obviously they did, because the parent had lost $3 billion or so, euros behind the back of the sofa. And so the situation there is to understand the liquidity position, because there'll be intercompany loans holding up credit lines, collateral lines to Visa, MasterCard for these programs. So the FCA, I think, was in a total no-win situation and did the right thing. It can't go and speak to, they generally won't go and speak to people in public to say why they're doing something, because it could probably spook people even more. So it was one of these situations which we should appeal as an industry. We have been, and we've been in discussions with both Treasury directly and also with the FCA directly, and also via various other lobbying mechanisms, to say, let's change the regulation here, guys. Let's fix that fundamental problem. So the customer monies are held under something like a proper trust structure, like you have in CAS or like in the PRA for proper banking deposits. And let's remove this quirk between the companies law and insolvency law and safeguarding. And I think I'll just come back in.
Simon, I can't hear you either.
We're back again, I think.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, I couldn't hear Simon though.
We're fixed. This is the joy of technical issues. Nigel, you were in full flow there, and actually you were just answering a question that had come in from Mike Follow, which said, given the many people in the supply chain and the blunt instrument of suspending a license, how do you think the FCA's approach could change? And I think some of the things you're pointing to there are really the beginnings of that. Is there a trust structure that we can look for client monies? How do we deal with some of these quirks in legislation, regulation that exist between payment regs and kind of companies acts? And there may be other things that we can look to too. But I'm conscious of the time because there's a lot of stuff we've got to get through today, guys. And audience, please do, if you have any other questions about this situation, please do send them through. But time has moved on as well. The suspension was lifted. Companies have moved to start kind of reintroducing service. So, Joanne, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your experience coming out of that and where some of these companies are, the role that GPS has played, and then sort of the role that you play alongside of Railsbank going forward as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, full services were resumed for all customers. I think it was on the Tuesday morning after the suspension. So, things have been running smoothly since, and yet with then the recognition that Wirecard Card Solutions was not going to be able to either be sort of sold in its entirety as an entity, and I'm sure Nigel is going to go into this in more detail, nor be able to sort of continue in its own right. Tom Jennings and team have been sort of working tirelessly to support what's been called an orderly wind down, which is to be able to support the entire customer base effectively rehome. And in that, I mean, GPS and other processors do play a part. I mean, GPS plays a major part because we actually process for between 70 and 80% of Wirecard Card Solutions as customers. So we've got quite a large portfolio there. Now, some of those customers, and you've had both Curve, Soldo, and Equals or on, and they had all. They'd already got sort of plans to migrate to their own principal memberships in flight, and those were able to be accelerated. And in fact, the Curve one we managed to get done inside 48 hours, those final steps. But that's not because you could do something start to finish in 48 hours. It was something that was a many month process that we were already partway through. Not surprisingly, all of the customers post that sort of suspension weekend then sought to, they recognizing they got effectively an existential threat, were seeking to figure out what is next for them as an entity. So in between the point at which those activities happened and then the Railsbank sort of offer term sheet came through, a number had already started and sort of signed up to moves in various directions. Some of which actually had already chosen to move to Railsbank, in fact. But equally others chosen to move to the likes of TPL, Morewand, and a number of others moving to self-issuing. So, I mean, I let Nigel describe the detail of the acquisition that Railsbank are performing. But basically, what GPS and Railsbank, with different hats on, are seeking to do is support the transition of those live programs off the Wirecard Card Solutions' boat and safely onto another boat. And the really positive aspect of doing these kind of what we call issuer migrations is that it's a process that is tried and tested. It's still complex. It's a precision exercise, but it's one that we have performed many times before, and therefore we know it can be done seamlessly and without interruption to the cardholder experience or to the programs themselves.
Yeah, it's something that when you've got a process that's just ready to go and you can run all of these customers and companies through that process that you've done many times before, it's neat to have that solution kind of work for people. And I guess it can give some people some confidence that, like, hey, we're not just reacting in an emergency. We've done this before. Like, we're just going to use that process that you've heard of. We're just going to use that.
It's like doing, it's like a surgeon doing a hip replacement. A man in the street wouldn't want to do it, but the surgeon does it repeatedly. So they know what they're doing. We know what we're doing. We're working with the right partners, and we'll ensure that the process is seamless.
Nigel, thoughts on sort of now you're here in the middle of the acquisition, and kind of what's your relationship to a lot of those customers, and what are you guys doing and looking to do?
Sure. As Joe says, I like your analogy, taking it to a new boat. It's because my co-founder was a commander in the Royal Navy in the submarines in a previous life, and I used to be a professional sailor, so in my youth, which is another story. What we're doing is we, as Joe says, we're relying on Joe and her team, because and on the processing side and the migration side of what's called a bin.
Bank identification number.
the group of cards on the platform, and as I say, they've done this before many times, and which gives us massive confidence, and it gives the customers massive confidence. We've also done it in Singapore, where we've migrated it, and we've migrated it with Joe and her team as well for some Wirecard customers in Singapore. So we've actually done it together as well, which is important. And then it's setting up a pragmatic program to move. To work with all the program managers of customers, they're interchangeable words, to their new home, essentially, and that is the approach we're taking, is to make sure it's as similar as possible as working in Wirecard on phase one, because we've all got Brexit coming up at the same time, and to make it as seamless and easy as possible. We've been doing a huge amount of planning. Understanding each program, understanding the details of all the money flows, all the regulated pieces, all the banking flows, all the technical pieces, all the reporting that needs, or the invoicing side, all the reconciliation pieces that need to be migrated across to make it as simple as possible for the program managers, and also as similar as possible to their previous experience. And then once we've got that over, then there can be a more deeper migration onto the core Railsbank platform. So the first thing, because we have COVID, because we have so many, is to keep the environment the same, and just the bins really moved over to us.
Just keep everything working, keep everything running, move the bins across so that the customers' cards look like they still work, and feel like they still work, and they do still work, frankly.
They do still work,
but it's all just keep it running before you make any real changes. And I think then that gives you the opportunity to do more later once things come along. But from a customer's perspective, will they notice anything? Like if I'm a customer of one of these brands who's out there with these cards, Joe, I mean, what should it mean for a customer? Is there going to be a point at the future at which things just suddenly change? Like what should that look and feel like to a customer?
Well, Nigel's actually going to be sort of closer to what's going to happen in terms of cardholder notifications, but in terms of functionality and usability of the cards, it remains exactly the same. And even though the cards themselves have Wirecard Card Solutions printed on the back, there will be waivers put in place, I believe, Nigel, such that those cards can still be used until their expiry. And so that's an important point for our customers, for the program managers, because they haven't got the significant cost of
replacing all those cards. Yeah. So your card will still work up until its expiry if you're a customer of a former Wirecard business, and then. Nigel, what sort of comes next? What does this purchase of Wirecard mean for you and for Railsbank? Where does it help you go? Is there a sort of A for those customers, but B for you as an organization?
B, for the customers, I think we can offer some extended services that the program manager can offer their card holders, and different type of use cases they can move into, different financial products they can also offer on the back of it, and using our platform also for interesting use cases where they can use reward points and make them spendable in real time, for example. So there's a whole load of interesting stuff and enhancements that the program managers can do for their card holders. For us as a business, we've become one of the larger.
He'll be back any second.
Sorry, did it cut out again?
Yes, but you're back, rocking and rolling.
Okay. Good. So we become one of the larger banking platform businesses across Europe. And as we maintain our positions, also we're still the only global one in the world. It brings some really great team members from Wirecard to join us, and some great experience. Going back to Joe's point earlier on, the Wirecard people are some good people. They've been in the business for many, many years. So it helps improve our customer service for our existing customers too. So that's a good thing. And it helps us build our business for basically our investors as well, and give confidence to our existing customers that there's more substance. It's a larger company. It's got more processes. It's got capable people, capable technology, etc. We haven't bought. Part of the assets purchase have been a tiny bit of the Wirecard technology, which is primarily a platform for the reporting and program management part. But that's just from a migration side to migrate into our platform. So it's only about 1% of our technology estate that comes across. But I think the future is looking good. I think we can give more optionality to the Wirecard customers because of our licensing across Europe, our licensing across Southeast Asia, our licensing across the US. So we can help our customers, the program managers, expand should they want to into new territories as well, and give new experiences.
And it's interesting, we saw some questions coming from the audience about exactly that. So we had Maria ask, what's the opportunity this unlocks for Railsbank? And Tawal Ali, who asked, what will the acquisition help with getting ahead of the competition? Do you think there's something competitive landscape-wise that this does for Railsbank we'll be back in a second. I'll ask that question when you're back, Nigel. But it is interesting that competitive landscape for what you do, Nigel, is heating up. There's a lot of people starting to offer this stuff. So do you think it helps you competitively as well, this acquisition?
Sure, it does. It gives us a step up in terms of customer numbers and cardholder numbers. But I think that, yes, there is more entrants coming to this market, primarily just on a pure software side. I think the real difference with us is because we own the stack all the way from customer to clearing, like we do in the Bank of England, we do in euros as well, and we will do in the United States within the next 18 months, is we're able to issue bank accounts, we're able to hold the money, we're able to operate directly the faster payments and the different local payment schemes. We're bank grade members of SWIFT, so we've got international payments as well. And then the other products are moving into credit and credit cards, and that we're launching in the United States at the moment is further areas that the customer bases can go into. And then for launching insurance as a service next year, and towards the end of next year, it'll be investments as a service. So there's a full stack of product available on a global basis that we'll be offering customers. And I think that takes us way ahead of the competition, who are still very much about issuing an account, but they're not the principal holders of the account. They're using third parties. And because we own the stack all the way through, we can guarantee the operational excellence of it. And for example, last night, UK faster payments went down for a bit, and then Barclays went down, and we were still up again running for our customers.
And that is the power, of course, of kind of getting closer to some of your own tech. Joe, I want to bring you to the kind of the ecosystem around Newcastle, if I can. There's a whole community of professionals up there that often don't. It's the human story doesn't get told. Could you talk a little bit about that ecosystem that has popped up around kind of the Wirecard Solutions and kind of companies that are up in the Newcastle area?
Yeah, for sure. So Wirecard Card Solutions was a business that was bought from Newcastle Building Society, which is why it was based up in Newcastle. And in fact, we set up an office in Newcastle alongside creating our customer success center of excellence, because the Wirecard customers were visiting Newcastle to go and see Wirecard. So we said, well, we might as well be up there as well. And where we built functionality together. So, the first sort of agency banking solution was really between GPS, Wirecard, and Bottomline. And so we created a technology center of excellence around that as well. But it's not just only us. FlexiCard became based in Newcastle. Canny, Crunch, lots of different businesses have created this whole fintech ecosystem in Newcastle. And I know Nigel's seeking to offer jobs to as many people as he can within Wirecard Card Solutions. But ultimately, there's 85 people there. And I hope that they all hold their heads up high and are proud of what they have achieved, and recognize that the whole wider ecosystem is looking out for them. And I very much hope that between us, they've got great skills and experience, and I hope between us we're able to ensure that everybody finds a future job, which we know that there'll be a number of people that are worried about that, particularly in this current COVID climate. But as I say, Nigel's offering jobs to as many as he can, and that's all going to become clear over the coming weeks.
I think that's the human story that so often doesn't get told. When these things go wrong, that there are people behind the scenes trying to help them go right. You don't question how your card payments work. You just want them to work. And what people don't realize is that when it doesn't work, an army of people swarm to try and fix that. And that's an incredibly high pressure job. It's incredibly hard to do. And these people are not the parent company in Germany, are not the bad guy, are actually quite the opposite, and so often get overlooked. And I think that needs saying.
And the loyalty and the commitment that they're showing today, in spite of everything that's happened, by their ultimate boss, the CEO of the parent company, has let them down, and they're picking up the pieces, and yet they're doing it in a way that is so helpful to ourselves and to Nigel and his team. And I couldn't thank them enough. I mean, I came into this industry in 2013. In 2013, 2014, I learned so much of everything I know about fintech from working closely with the team at Wirecard Card Solutions, and I thank them for that from the bottom of my heart. We've worked on so many different types of program, creating, pushing boundaries, creating new products. I mean, I'll never forget, say, 2015, when Tom Blomfeld assembled his ecosystem of what he wanted to launch Monzo. He pulled the whole team together up in Newcastle. And we all sat down together and said, right, I want one thing: to be able to put cards in the hands of journalists in 8 weeks' time. Tell me how to make that work. And so the stories like that, where we'd all worked together to be able to break the mold, whilst working very much inside the the perimeters of what's permitted, both from a scheme rules perspective, from an FCA perspective. I mean, if you could accuse the Wirecard team of one thing, they were sticklers for process and for doing things properly. Mm-hmm. And if anything, it would take time to get new cards through what we call pavement testing, which is the testing prior to taking the card live, because they were being very careful that the card's working exactly as expected, every fee set up exactly as we're expecting it to be. So they were they are, sticklers for process and doing things properly. And one of the things we've got to be sort of mindful of as an ecosystem is that there is a very important role that what we call bin sponsors play in the ecosystem, because fintechs in particular, they are seeking to push the boundaries, to push hard to try and mash different ideas together. That's what this whole thing's about. And the bin sponsors provide that layer of support and protection to the ecosystem to make sure that when new products are going live, they have been adequately thought through, tested, adhere to, or all the various scheme rules, whatever rules, which are all rules in place for a good reason. And whilst there is an increasing move towards principal membership with both schemes, actually that's not always the right move on day one. And working with bin sponsors who can provide that support and protection is absolutely critical. And we work with, I think it's nearly 50 bin sponsors now all over the world, but we certainly believe that they play a fundamental part in the ecosystem. There needs to be more, particularly outside of Europe, where you don't get the pan-SEPA opportunities to be able to extend the license. In every country, we're looking to extend our network of bin sponsors and happy to help banks or regulated entities understand the role, the opportunity that there is for them in sweating their assets to become a bin sponsor.
Absolutely. I mean, this kind of when you are building a fintech, or if you're trying to embed finance as your brand, having somebody that knows what they're doing and can provide a lot of that for you is hugely valuable. So the role bin sponsors play is phenomenally valuable, and we need more of them around the world. We definitely do. Look, we are coming up to our 45 minutes. So Nigel, quick fire. What happens next? What would you like to tell your customers before we wrap up?
What happens next is it's going to be a migration. It's complex. We're going to try and make it as easy as possible by working closely with Joe, and for the card holders to keep them having their experience that they have consistent and uninterrupted. So we're here for them to make this as simple and easy as possible, given all the deadlines we have, and also we have Brexit on. So it's going to be hard work, but we're there for them, and we've got the team stood up to work together and breaking down barriers and making one team like ourselves, MasterCard, Visa, GPS, and the Wirecard team to make this all happen.
Fantastic. How about you, Joe? What happens next?
So, well, there's a work to cut out in this regard in supporting our customers, and we thank our customers for supporting. Sort of sticking with us, and we work together on this process. I mean, from our side of things, whilst this is, there is a large number of customers, it's actually 3.5% of our processing portfolio. So, we still have lots of other activity and exciting things happening in lots of different places. I think, my shout out to people that have listened to this today, thanks for taking the time to stop and listen to how all of this really hangs together. And I'd encourage everybody to be able to share this a bit more, to be able to provide more clarity on how this ecosystem actually works. What we find across this ecosystem, there are very many self-proclaimed experts who are sort of quick to sort of share information, particularly on social media, without particularly validating the sources. I'm always happy to sort of share, to provide the insights, but it needs the whole ecosystem to work together. And I think as a fintech ecosystem, it works through partnership. That is the beauty of this ecosystem, but it it works effectively when we are all working together. And even if there's parties who are actually naturally competitors to each other, we all benefit if for these key activities and these key where we're talking out to the wider world, we talk as one and we're supportive of each other.
Absolutely. Look, fintech was the UK's big tech story for quite some time. It was what made us special in the world. And I think there's been more than a little glee in tearing that down a little bit. But so often, just by understanding what's going on beneath the surface, by scratching a little deeper, by getting informed, we can really learn a little bit more. So this is why we do Fintech Insider Insights. And this is why I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Joe, where can people find out more about what you do over at GPS?
So globalprocessing.com, or connect with me on LinkedIn, Joanne Dewar, Dewar.
Thank you so much. And Nigel. Oh, perfect timing, Nigel. It's throwing right to you, you disappear. I'm sure you'll be back in just 1 second. Nigel, where do people find out more about you?
Yes, thank you. It's you can go to railsbank.com, or you can get to me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Nigel Verdon on LinkedIn, so please do reach out. And I'll just echo the ecosystem thing for fintech. Ever since the fintech thing kicked off, this is the third fintech I've founded. We've always worked together, regardless as competitors or not, and that's one of the sort of basis that we all operate under. And so I think this is a great example of us. Situations happened, we're all working together on it to make a good outcome for the cardholders and the customers, and that's the most important thing.
Here's hoping customers win in the end. Fingers crossed, and it sounds like it's all going that way. So thank you for watching. If you like what you've seen, remember to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast client. Don't forget to leave us a review over on that client as well when you're there. And remember, if somebody loves fintech and they're not listening to Fintech Insider, they're not following us on LinkedIn, then pass it along. Tell them all about it. If you have any suggestions or feedback, find us on social media, search for 11FS, or email podcasts@11fs.com. Otherwise, thank you very much and goodbye for now.
Thank you.